Okay, welcome everybody. Today we are going to review all of the applications and their releases for the month of December. So starting on our meetings and trainings page at the bottom, you'll see the new calendar year 2025 link. However, we're reviewing December 2024, so it's under there, which during the month of December for USAS, there was one hot fix and two regular releases. On those, there was a bug fix that corrected the process in the code that initialized the accounts receivable customers. And something was happened with the bug that was throwing a class cast exception error. So that's been corrected. There was also a patch to correct the account data for a specific district related to an account change that did not complete properly. So that was fixed, and then the district should have been able to redo the account change that was not completed. Some improvements with USAS included the account change grid to reflect to say from account to account. So let me show you that. Under the utilities, account change. I forget what it said prior to this, but it was not clear. So now it's from this account to this account. And it was just these headers that were updated. Also in USAS, there was a change to the mask load for the cash account. And we updated the documentation, and now it requires this fund type. So when you're mass loading and the CSV formatted file, that's required, because when you're setting up a cash account, it's also required when you're doing it manually. So in the application, well, first, here is an example. If I wanted to mass add the 9025 accounts for 006 and 007, I have this new column that's required. So then under utilities, mass load, it should not throw an error now. But if you don't have that column, it will throw an error. But since our spreadsheet had it, there was no errors. And now when you go to mass load, the core cash account, you can see that they have been added. 9025, 006, and 007. Any questions on that? Because other than that, for USAS, there was a patch to determine the usage of specific general fund special cost centers, and that was done for the auditor of state. And then there was two rest controller internal work, as you see listed there. So if there's no questions for USAS, I'll go ahead and turn it over to USPS releases for the month of December.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
All right, I will get switched over. Good morning. Okay, we don't have a lot either for payroll this month. We had two regular releases and then one hot fix. We only had one bug fix, and this was for the SSDT advance report. So you won't see this until you start running your advance in the end of the fiscal year. This will now exclude any archived STRS items. So you will receive a message, no active position level or employee level for STRS find item found for a position number. So we'll give you that info message if there is an archived STRS item. And that will be on this report for this new error that will be coming out, or it is out, but you won't see it till STIRS Advanced when you start running that. The next one is the improvements, W2 archive individual forms. We added the save and recall options for this perimeter now. Just a reminder on that, we've had a lot of issues where the districts are running these reports and it's running not what they're thinking. So always double check how they're running this, most recent or default. Most recent, we'll just continue rerunning whatever you had. Now, if you want to go back to the original and start over, you want to make sure you do your default then. So if they're seeing the same thing over every time they're running the report, try the default first and see if that works. Another thing we found when running some of these reports is they had maybe a city tax entity code selected. Over here in W2 report also, I think you can select that. Yes. Make sure those are clear. We do have this in with the developers to check this because it seems like it's catching. And if that is the case, double check to make sure when you're running maybe for file archive or something like that, that those are clear. Just to be certain if it seems to be repetitive and it's, I know we had one where the districts were, it was only file archiving one person. And what they found out, it was because the city in the city field here was checked, and we believe that that save and recall is catching that and not clearing. So just double check that to make sure that these are clear. If you're having that issue when you're trying to do maybe the file archive, that was the big one that we've noticed. The two districts, I think, found that, but we do have that in with the developers. So if you're starting to do file archive and they're finding that that issue is the issue, double check these different tax entity codes and make sure they're clear. And then make sure that when they're doing the file archive to make sure that their save and recall is on default. Because what the save and most recent is catching what they'd done prior. It shouldn't, but we've noticed that it sometimes was. So again, we're looking into that. And just to let you know, if they do run into that, let us know, send a ticket, and we'll let the developers know that it's still continuing. Okay, next one. ACH submission view, remove the payrolls with no direct deposit. This was just an update that now when they have running a pay and there is no direct deposits in that pay, it will not show underneath your ACH submission view anymore. That's completely been removed. So if it was all checks, what they were doing, it was showing under this ACH submission here, and it should not be. These should only be direct deposits. So now they will no longer see pays that maybe they for a special pay that they did all checks that will no longer show in here. The next one is the update employee dashboard edit window. They just had it where they didn't want to see an employee. It was not matching what was showing under core employee, the 4 columns. It was kind of, I think, messed up, like it was showing 5 columns. And so they just wanted that to mimic what was showing under the core employee. So now those two match. So when you go here now, you see 4 columns, just like you would underneath employee dashboard. So those two match. It's kind of a facelift. The next one was add a pay date to the header for all the reports for payroll detail view. So this will be for all your reports that you're running during payroll. So now you will see a pay date has been added. So they will have that on each page when they're running those reports. The next thing is on the SSD user listing, which is under home, and user extract reports, which is under the home reports under here. These 2 reports. Now, when they run this 2-factor authentication box is there now. So they can, that will be included when they're running those reports. So they'll either, if they have that checked for these employees, it'll be checked. If not, then it'll be linked. So it's just easier way to run the report now. And then they'll be able to see this all on all that info on these two reports now. The next thing is we're just improving the look and feel of reports, making it easier to read. So I'll go ahead and run a report here. I'm not going to run all of them because all it's doing is just updating the look of them. If I have anything, let me see if I do. Should have ran one before. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah. So this is kind of what your those reports that are on that list is going to kind of look like. They're just doing putting some gray boxes up here and doing every other line. So it's just easier for the eye to read and to follow a line across. So hopefully that will make it a little bit easier for your districts to read reports. Again, those were added to all these reports here. They're working on, I think, trying to update all of them, but they're doing a little by little. So they did quite a few on this last release. So I'll let you go ahead and look at all of those if you want to. But again, it kind of just, they all mimic the same thing. The next one, they updated the federal tax table. So that has been updated. So now when they're running their January pays, all the federal tax calculations will be correct for the new 2025 year. And also they updated Social Security. If your employees, when your employees have Social Security wages, again, that has been updated for 2025 to $176,100. And again, we updated that in our documentation. And the other one was just a historical record for a district. For that was the only patch we had. So again, not too much for December. Is there any questions on any of the releases for payroll? Okay. I will hand it over to Michelle. Thank you and have a good weekend.
Okay, thanks, Andrea.
You're doing it
No,
back.
that's
Oh,
okay.
all right, thank you.
I forgot to hit on inventory. So we did have one inventory release in December. And what it did was update the CSV file for the book value report and the asset listing grant source report. So instead of 2 lines per tag number, it's going to have 1. So I have an example. So before you could see it was taken 2 lines on the CSV file. So it made it impossible to sort. So now this is down below is the new format with 1 line per tag. So that's been updated and nice. The PDF report did not change because it was okay. And then the time zone has been corrected to the Eastern Standard Time. So now the reports will reflect the right time as well as the timestamps not being in military time. So that's been updated to be Eastern Standard Time too. So if there's no questions, I'll hand it over to Michelle.
Thanks, Pat. Okay, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and cover the employee self-service releases that took place in December, and we had 2. It's nice to see just a couple and not this, and and some hot fixes as well. So it looks cleaner up here. But in those 2 releases, we got a lot done. I'm not going to cover all the bug fixes. But we had on December 6th, we had version 17 went out, and then on December 20th, version 18 went out. So just going over some of these bug fixes. Yeah, just the couple here that at the beginning under editing a professional leave request with expenses, it was allowing the user to also edit the daily details information. Those should be read only. So we fixed that so that doesn't happen anymore. And also when editing a leave request on a blackout date, if for some reason they were editing the leave type, they received some type of null pointer stat trace error message, that's been fixed to report the correct information, not just a stacked up. The originator of a leave request may receive an error upon saving changes to a rejected leave request. There was a stack trace that suggested an incorrect load of data, so that error just needed to be cleaned up. So we fixed that. Another one here. I'm going to skip over the inconsistencies because that's basically what it was. But this one here where we have leave request grid start and ending date filters. What we were having is when people were using those start and end date filters, and they did not include like a specific time on that leave request. They just left it the default, which is 12 a.m. to 11:59 a.m. or p.m. When they were using the start and ending date filters, it wasn't picking those up correctly. So we fixed that. And I kind of wanted to go over those leave request start and stop date filters with you guys, because I know we've had questions on those, and just get people a little bit more comfortable. We covered them several releases ago, but I just thought it may be a good idea to go over them again. I'm just going to go in, I'm logged in, and I'm just going to go into leave request and the district leave request. I'm talking about these columns right here, the start dates and the stop dates. We do have this documented in our leave request documentation. Just over here real quick. In there we have under the miscellaneous information, start date and stop date filtering, and it uses some examples of how to use these. So if your districts are questioning this, you can refer them to this area in the chapter to explain them. And the reason why, the developers changed that up a while ago is one, because we didn't have greater than, less than, equals to type of options available. And because leave requests can also be multi-day, you can enter a leave request from, January 3rd through January 8th, just for one. They wanted to enhance that so that you can filter a little bit better based on, greater than, less than, and filtering on those leave requests that are multi-day leave requests. So I just wanted to go over some examples of this. And so I'm just going to pick on what we're seeing here and just kind of eyeballing, what's on this grid here, just kind of looking through. It's always going to show the most recent request first. So I'm in the district leave request, so I'm seeing everybody's leave request. And just eyeballing here, I've got probably 20, 25 leave requests from January and December listed here, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a couple of these examples here. So if I want to filter this, starting with the beginning leave requests that begin with December 1st, what I can do is underneath the start date, I would just enter in that 12/1. What's nice too is that it starts filtering for you. 2024 date, and it's going to go out there then, and it's going to pull in anything that begins with December. Sorry, I'm going to make these a little bit bigger so we can see the whole thing. That begins with 12/1/2024. So any leave request with a start date that begins. So this is probably the most popular filtering, is that they're just saying, okay, I want to see everything that starts from December 1st. And so, yeah, when I do that, I'm scrolling down and it's only including those from December on. So that's going to be December through my current date through January. If I want to view leave requests that are less than or equal to 12/1/2024. So what I can do is I would remove it here and I would add it here because this is kind of my less than or equal to. So again, if I put in 12/1/2024, filter that. And then what's going to happen then is you noticed it changed this, and I do not see any leave requests after or on 12/1/2024. It's showing me everything prior to that date. So those are just, kind of some things to think about when they're doing this filtering. I'm going to show you a couple more here. Let's say I want to view leave requests with dates between 12/1 and 12/31. So these are start dates. So I want to see everything with a start date on the leave request from 12/1 and then to 12/31/2024. And so again, that is going to pull up everything that is inclusive of those start dates. So that's all that I'm seeing on here. This last one I want to show you is I'm going to go back and just remove these just by clicking on X. It's going to clear that out. And that's going to take me back to everything that's on my grid. And I'm going to pick on the 13th here. And so you're going to see here on the 13th, we have, looks like 3 leave requests. And they all have start dates of 1/13, but their stop dates are different because they're multi-day requests. And so if I wanted to find any leave requests that were the start and ending date is 1/13, I try to enter that in here. So I'm going to pick on 1/13 and I'm going to put in a stop date. So greater than or equal to 1/13, less than or equal to 1/13. You notice it doesn't bring anything up because we don't have any that's just one day. So I think that's probably the one that's tripping up people the most. I think for the most part, using just a beginning date and the start date is going to get them what they need. But when they start like filtering in specifically, if I actually had a leave request that was just for the 13th, it was one day, 1/13 to 1/13, this filter would then work. It would bring up and it would display that one leave request. But because these are multi-day here, that's why, this is the way to find those by doing a start and then a stop on the stop date. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to show those to you so you can kind of see how these work. And like I said, we do have these, some of these examples documented in there. And so, I think it's just a matter of just kind of playing around with them and getting some examples created so that you can then show your districts. This is how these start and stop dates work. But like I said, tying this back to what was going on with the release is, you notice on all of these, they don't, they actually selected a time period, 8 to 5, 8 to 5. But for some reason, for some of those where they didn't select a time period, they weren't getting included in the filter. And so we fixed that so that it's smart enough to know, even though they didn't put in a date, it's still within that, even they didn't put in a time, it's still within that date. So that was what was fixed on the bug. Okay. Other related information here on bugs, the user exports and the user grid will now filter correctly on the last login. So just going over to the users just to show you where that's at. There is a last login area here now that, and then they can filter and sort by that as well. And then they can also export by that. Just some miscellaneous ones here, and I'm going to just stick on, just talk about ones that aren't like specific, unique type of situations. I think it's this last one here, sub-coordinator grid start and ending filters. Again, this is just like the leave request start and ending date filters that we just covered. Same thing, is it was fixed on the sub-coordinator grid as well, so that it does pull those leave requests in, it filters correctly on those start and ending filters for any leave requests that have that default 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. Time frame. Okay. Those are the bigger bugs that I wanted to talk about, that we received tickets and stuff on. Improvements, we had quite a few in December, so I do want to cover the majority of these. And again, I subcategorize them, so it's just easier to see what was improved. And so absence management related ones, under the data import view, we did do some improvements on the process message field. And so I'm just going to take you in there. I'm going to go down to absence management and the data import view. And so a couple things that we did is that for each of these tabs here, we added 2 new columns. We added the processed date and the processed message on those. So those are included on the grid now. Also, and you'll notice too that those are filterable and sortable. And also we improved how things are being sorted by default on some of these grids in here. So underneath the absence create and the absence update, those are going to sort by default by the leave date. So those are the absence date. So those will be sorted by default by the absence date. Whereas the rest of these columns, for example, the subassigned, those are going to sort by process date. So that's this date right here. So just an FYI on how those are filtering. So we improved the sorting and then the filtering underneath there. Also, just like picking on one of these is if I go back to absence create, and obviously this is stuff that's, getting pulled over from ASAP. And if I just look at this first one here, one other thing that we improved is the processed message text box, made it larger so that you guys can read the entire message better. So that was improved as well. Okay. Let's see, what else did we do for ESS? Leave related, lots of leave related updates. I'm going to go under changing the order of the columns on the district and supervisor leave analysis grid. So I am going to go into the leave manager and I'm going to go into the district leave analysis. Also, the supervisor leave analysis that's under the leave request, that's the other one. We made some improvements here. For one, what we did is we made sure that the approved personal leave, I believe that is tied in with the rest of the personal leave. I think that was floating out there in some other area of the grid. And so we made sure that the approved personal leave is next to the other personal leave columns. And also, when selecting, I'm just going to pick on one of these, and I really like this grid. So what I can do is, if you aren't very familiar with this, it is showing me everyone. And I'm under the district leave, so it's showing everyone here and their leave balance information in the top half of the screen. And I can go in and export any of this out that I want to into a CSV file. Or if I select on somebody here, I can then click on See Leave for Selected, and it will display their leave and leave details underneath here in this bottom half of the grid. But anyways, going back to Catherine here, I'm going to go ahead and select her and then click on Export Grid Items. And I want to say, yes, I want to limit the export to just this person that I selected. And what we've improved here, go ahead and view that, is, let me make this bigger here, is we split out the name by last name, first name, and middle name. So that was one of the improvements that we made on here. So it was all underneath just one column. And so we made it so that you can, sort and view this easily in a spreadsheet. So that was one of the improvements we made there. Let's go back. And the leave calendar, the CSV options underneath leave calendar, we made some improvements there as well. So I'm going to go into there. I'm going to go to leave calendars. And underneath, I don't have the access to the My Leave calendar because I'm in the admin account. But underneath the My Leave calendar, when you're printing a calendar as a CSV file, the title column has been replaced with a category. So that's one thing that you'll see. One thing that I can show you underneath the district leave calendar here. Again, you can do a PDF for the monthly view, which is the default view, and you can do a PDF for the weekly view. That was something they did have to pause for a little while to make some changes. Those were included on the December release as well. And then they made the weekly view, calendar view available for the PDF option, I think on 18, like in December. So before you only saw the CSV option underneath the weekly, now you're going to see both the PDF and the CSV option underneath the weekly. And like I said, for the monthly, you're going to see those same options. But anyways, going in here, I've got the monthly, I've got CSV file, and I have print monthly calendar to a PDF. So again, if I selected the CSV and ran an export on this, hold this up. And enhance this. What we've done is on this one, the name's still under the same, but we've split out the category and the length. So now there are 3 new columns, the name, the category, and the length on here. So that was the big change on those. Some other things here. I'm going to skip down to this one because it's still talking about the calendars. We updated the weekly calendar PDF to use a grid and sub-reporting to prevent memory leaks. So again, this is what I was talking about, is that the weekly one the PDF option wasn't working. So we had to suspend that for a little bit. And then we fixed that then on the 18 release so that you have the option to generate a PDF for the weekly leave calendar. Allowing, let's see, export leave requests before final processing. This is a nice new enhancement and one that a lot of people had asked about. So I'm going to go into the leave management and the export leave requests. And so what I'm talking about here is this print pre-export report. So this is a very nice option. They can basically generate a report of what's going to go on their next export, so that they can just look at everything and just make sure that everything looks good. So obviously these are all grayed out until I start doing some filtering and some selecting in the grid. So I'm just going to pick on the first pay in December. Say it's the 1st through the 15th. Make it easy. You notice as I'm doing that, it's filtering the grid, but still I can't do anything yet until I select the leave that I want to export. So I'm just going to select all of these. So instead of using export leave request to create it, because what happens is when I use that option, it'll generate, the CSV file, or I can also direct post, and then it changes the status of those leave requests to export it. I don't want to do that yet. I just want to test this out. I can run this print pre-export. When I do that, click on save, pull that up. It's going to bring up that information. And there might be more options available that might be added to this, but this is where we're at right now with what is on that CSV file. So it's the stuff that's needed. in order, this is basically what it's going to look like when you run the actual export. And then these are the fields that are needed then for them to get loaded into USPS properly. But yes, it shows all that information so that you can run any calculations that you need to, review information. If all looks good, then you basically can go back in and run the actual export leave request. So when running the pre, doesn't do anything, doesn't change the leave statuses. They're all still approved. But once you run the export leave request, then they'll all change to exported. So nice tool, helpful tool for the districts just to pre-plan and make sure everything looks good. Okay, let's see here. One other thing, go back. This one right here, displaying a warning notification when mass approving leave requests that exceed a set absence threshold. So if a district has absence thresholds set up, and the supervisor is going in and doing mass approvals, it will create a warning notification. And I got that in the documentation. I'm not going to run it, but I'm going to show you where that's at. I'm going to go down to leave management, absence thresholds. And this is what I'm talking about right here. So if the threshold has been exceeded and you are approving a leave request, a warning, it's a warning, not an error, is displayed stating that there are open leave requests for that date and that building that exceed the percentage of absences allowed for that day. So, like I said, it's only a warning and they can proceed with approving those. So it shows, the building and, the date and all that good stuff. So that's something that we improved. Some user-related information under the grid, the groups grid, we improved the grid filters. When you're in there and you're looking at the grid and you're trying to filter on the groups grid in there, it wasn't filtering nicely. We had to improve that. So it filters by contains instead of starts with. So yeah, people were going in there and trying to do a filter on the groups. And if I go in and just type in, I'll type in a manager approve. And you'll see now that it doesn't actually start with it. It just contains the APP. So it just shows all of those groups that contain the word approve or APP. So it's just smarter in its filtering. Timesheet related improvements that we made. We did change the comp time on a leave request timesheet activity so that it behaves like the rest of the leave request types. So they can create a leave request for comp time. It's going to then get pulled into the timesheet just like any other leave request, personal, sick, vacation. It's going to get pulled in the same way. So it behaves the same way as the other leave request types. Also, the auto-generated column now displays on the timesheet period grid. So if using timesheets for the timesheet manager, when they go down there into the period grid, it shows the auto-generated to show, was this period an auto-generated period, or was this period a period that they manually created? I think those are the only two improvements in the timesheets. We also had some improvements made to the custom links and the announcement manager areas in the application. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but you'll be able to see that they did some improvements. I think one that I want to point out is improving how the contents of an announcement is stored in the database without exceeding the limit. So if I wanted to put an image in there or something, it was giving errors and stuff like that, or it wasn't doing it. And I think I go back up to the home page. I think I have an announcement here. So, welcome back staff and a Happy New Year image. They can include that now. Before that wasn't working well, so we did improve that. Also, just, some screen improvements, like when creating a whitelist, it was taking up the whole screen. So we don't need that whole screen for what you're entering in when creating a whitelist on the grid. So we've, just made things look a little bit better on the UI. Also, there was a notification to refresh the screen when a custom link, so adding or editing custom links. I'm sorry, that's blurry, but it does say this change requires a refresh, and they just need to click on that to accept the changes. So those are some of those improvements made underneath custom links. And then we just had some miscellaneous updates as well. There's just a couple I want to show you here. One that I really want to point out that's important is underneath the data sinks. So I'm in here. What was out of here? Mouse is stuck here. And I'm going to go down to system. And I'm going to go down to the USPS data sync. One thing to make note of is that when syncing positions, it's also going to sync employee data at the same time. That was the big change. Before you sync, you sync positions and it just would sync the position data. But the employee data wasn't getting updated, as much as often. So we've made that improvement. And we also put that in the documentation underneath the sync positions, that it syncs both positions and employee data. You're going to see that too on the app log. If I went into the app log, I think I did a sync back like around 8:30. And anything that says like step here, I think at 8:32, yeah, it looks like I did some syncing of the positions, and it also did a syncing of the employee data at the same time. Okay. What else did I want to show you underneath the miscellaneous here? One other thing that we did right here where it talks about read-only checkboxes look and feel. I go back in here and I just go back up to leave request. I want to show you just what the slight changes that were made. I'm going to go to view district leave, and I'm going to pick on the first one here, Kristen. And so what they've done is they just improved the look of these boxes that are read only. And you'll notice that they all are outlined like with a dash, meaning, they can't access those. So we changed that up. And then any boxes that are checked, like these, this is her leave request that's already been exported. So that was all checked, after it was exported. But you'll notice that it's grayed out. So any of those checked boxes that they can't access to because they're read-only are noted like in a gray format here. So those were some of those updates. You'll notice everything else again, these other ones that aren't like quote checked boxes, it's in that dashed line to show that it's read-only and they can't go in and make changes to it. And one other thing that was done, let me go back to the recap here, is setting a cookie timeout for 30 minutes. We've been receiving some tickets regarding that. So what's happening is that we've had a couple reports that users are getting timed out automatically while they're in there doing, actively entering in information. Is just dumping them out and sending them back to the login page. That's happened to me as well. So I know that we've already reported that to the developers and they're looking into that. Most people probably aren't in here for longer than 30 minutes, other than maybe, the sub coordinators or people at, in the treasurer's office that are working on this stuff. A user probably just goes in here, does their leave request and gets back out. So they probably don't see the timeout as much as somebody that's in here for a little while, running reports, looking at stuff, approvers, sub coordinators, leave managers. Like I said, that has been reported to the developers. I don't see a JIRA issue created yet. I checked this morning before we started our session, and I don't see one yet, but I think they need to go in. I think it's something that they need to discuss with Baden. and see what needs to be done. So if you do get reports of people saying, I was in there, I was actively in there and it dumped me out, it's okay, they can go back in. But we are looking into that so that you guys are aware of that. The last thing I want to show you guys is the new feature, and the big one for December was implementing a sub-coordinator by X roles, and that's sub-coordinator by building. And that's a little typo. I probably need to add some stuff to this. Sub-coordinator by building, sub-coordinator by department code, and sub-coordinator by pay group. So these have been documented. And basically what this means is it's going to allow access to the sub-coordinator grid. So when you assign somebody that role, they will go in, log in, and they'll see the sub-coordinator menu option, but it's going to pre-filter the grid based on their corresponding role here. So I think I'll just take you through one of these here so you get an idea. I'll pick on sub-coordinator by building here. I think I've got somebody listed here. I'm going to log in as her. And like I said, before I do that, I want to show you where it is in the documentation. So if I go up to the sub-coordinator, this information then is listed down here, roles associated. Before, we had to be determined on this one, the department code and the pay group. So we have changed those now, well, actually all four of these. And so, like I said, it's going to give, when that person logs in, like for example, with the sub-coordinator by building, they'll be able to log in. They will see the sub-coordinator menu. And when they go in to look at that information, it's going to pre-filter the grid, allowing them to view or edit those leave requests to assign the sub information within the same building as their position. So same thing with pay group. With this role, it will pre-filter the grid, allowing you to view edit requests on the grid with the same pay group as your position. And the same thing with the department code. So like I said, if I go in and she has sub-coordinator by building role. Oh, changed on me. Try that again. And here is the sub-coordinator because of that role. And again, if I go look at her profile quick, we can tell she has got the substitute coordinator by building role. So again, I go into the sub-coordinator. It is only going to show those people on here, allowing me to go in and make any changes to their sub-assigned information. So a substitute needed obviously is grayed out, but the rest of it, I can go in and the substitute scheduled and make changes there. But in here, she's only going to see those ones that are within the same building as her position. So that's how it pre-filters on that. I think that's the only new feature that we had in December. So any questions in regards to what took place in ESS during December? Out of information. Okay, if not, the only thing I want to wrap up with is Happy New Year. We have done some updates on our training and registration page. So I'm taking you there. And right now it is in draft mode. But we have made changes and updated it with the 2025 training sessions. So we've got them pretty much squared away. We do have some open spots in here for weeks where we'll probably be putting in more depending on the needs, especially with Ippy Dippy. when that is going to be made available. Obviously, we will be inserting more training sessions for the Ippy Dippy replacement. But yeah, you can go in here and scroll through our training dates. We don't have the registration link set up yet, so that's on my to-do list. So those should be available probably at the beginning of next week, where you can start registering for these sessions. It's same setup as last year. It's a Zoom registration. So once you fill out the registration page, you'll get an email with the registration information, and you can add it to your calendar so that you don't forget about the session. And then obviously the same thing, we will be recording all of those. And so the links will be provided here, any supporting material links. And then obviously once the session has been recorded, we'll attach the webinar link and the CEU. So you can get all that information here underneath this one training. Also, the 2024 page has been archived. If you're like, wait a minute, where'd the 2024 recordings go? They're here. To review a recorded webinar from 2024, you just click here, and it's going to take you to all of our 2024 ones with the supporting materials, recording links, and if you need the CEU, they're all listed here. So all that information's out there from 2024 still. So yeah, what I'm planning on doing next week is sending you all an email message, letting you know that the registration links have been created for 2025 so that you guys can start registering. And it's also going to include some other SSDT support related information for the new year as well on that email. So look for that email to come out hopefully here next week with all this information. Okay, I think that's all I had. Any questions? All right. All right. Well, you guys I feel so weird. I guess, it is Friday. It feels like a Tuesday to me. You guys have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you guys here. We're not doing any sessions in January because we usually don't because it's so busy with calendar year end. So our next session then with you guys will be February 7th, and we'll be covering the January recaps. All right. Thank you. Have a good weekend.